Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Community Committee. I'm Councillor Sally Derham-Wilkes and I'm Chairman of the committee. Members and officers have their names in front of them for ease of reference. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed by the Council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeat viewing. If you're seated in the chamber, it's possible that cameras will capture your image. By your presence, you are deemed to consent to being filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Thank you. Right, we will start with apologies.
Apologies received, Chairman, from Councillor Mrs Hallam.
Thank you. The second item is declaration of interest. Now, I know all members use the car parks and have permits for those car parks, and that is one of the items, Crown Centre parking study. But I don't believe it deems as an interest as far as this meeting is concerned. Right, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are you all happy with them? We have a proposal for those. Thanks, David.
Madam Chairman, happy to propose as set out.
Thank you.
Happy to second, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Right, we move to the first item on the agenda, Saxon Square toilet block refurbishment. Welcome to the table, Lindsay. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This report deals with the refurbishment of the Saxon Square toilets. I'm sure those of you who frequent the facility would know it is in need of some fairly urgent improvements. And we've taken the opportunity to look at alternative designs for the toilets and have come to the view that the system that's been adopted by quite a few other local authorities in Ringwood, in fact East Dorset has got some in Verwood, whereby the individual toilets are actually, or cubicles are accessed from the outside of the building rather than going into an area inside the building as at present. The reason that has been done and the advantages that people have found in other areas is that there have been reduced vandalism reported, and there's also the benefit that if there is some vandalism, then generally it only puts one of the cubicles out of operation whilst you're carrying out repairs, whereas obviously if you're doing it in a communal area, that makes it more difficult to keep the other units open. That's the main alteration in terms of the layout of the toilets, and there's also a proposal that some of the cubicles are unisex. So you'll see, Chairman, on the plan at Appendix 1 that there are 4 toilets cubicles that have been proposed as being unisex, basically to allow greater flexibility. So if there's more demand from either sex, then obviously unisex ones can deal with that. So the proposals, Chairman, are that the toilets are refurbished as set out in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Lindsay. Does anybody have any questions on this report, please? Colin?
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, in the longer term, there's the maintenance issue. Can we sort of be told what sort of internal finishes are going to be used on the surfaces, whether they're sort of going to be vandal proof, whether the installation of the flushing systems, pipe work, etc. is going to be concealed? Looking at the design, I also see it is going to look like a total demolition job for the existing toilets, because this is a totally new layout, totally new toilets. is there any provision for temporary toilets while these are out of use? Because the other nearest town centre toilets are quite a way away for those that are elderly. Thank you.
Answering those questions in turn, Chairman, they will be vandal resistant finishes that we'll be using. Clearly you can never produce anything that's vandal proof. All of the pipework will be concealed in the access corridor that you'll see that runs along the back of the cubicles, which is basically along the back, the side wall of the church. So all of that stuff that can actually be easily vandalised or more easily vandalised will be concealed. It will be the Wallgate style hand wash units that are used. Those of you, obviously the gentlemen who have been into the current gentlemen's toilets, you'll see there is some fairly new Wallgate units in that area. So it would be those sorts of units that would be used in all of the toilets. We are planning to use fairly traditional tiled walls as opposed to anything more complicated than that, because although that is obviously they can be damaged, they are easier to repair than using laminate systems. In terms of the actual structure of the building, Chairman, we aren't doing a total demolition. We aren't going to completely knock the building down and start afresh. The outline of the building is as it is today. So the roof will stay where it is, the external walls will stay as they are. Clearly there's a lot of internal work, demolitions to be done, and there's also openings to be made in the outside walls of the existing building. And also, if those of you familiar, what's shown as the larger of the two accessible toilets, there's currently a big wooden double door in that area there that will obviously be bricked up. So there won't be there aren't any plans to demolish it. It is alterations to the existing structure, but as Councillor Bungay says, very extensive alterations. The point about temporary toilets, that's something that we will be able to provide. The problem, of course, is that there's limited space there. We do lease the majority of this land to other people, and we do have space in a car parking area towards Saxon Square toilets, but there are issues even with that, with vandalism, so it needs to be a balance struck. But I'll be happy to give that some more consideration, Chairman, and come back to the committee.
Thank you, Lindsay. I've got a number of people with questions. David.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is with reference to item 2.3, the Wallgate hand washing machines. My experience of these machines personally is that they're not exactly the best things in the world for washing and drying one's hands, and I just wonder, is that provisional sum of £10,000 enough to provide a good quality Wallgate or similar type facility? Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, there will be, when that £10,000 was first allocated, that was based on the current layout, where you can obviously share the hand wash units more readily in the communal area, and obviously you can't share them at all when they're in individual cubicles. But the £115,000 estimate did include an allowance for the extra Wallgates that would be necessary to provide one in each unit. The ones, as I mentioned earlier, that have been fairly recently renewed will be reused. So there are two fairly new ones in the gents' toilets. I must say I haven't been in the ladies' toilets to check, but anything that's serviceable will be reused in terms of the Wallgate units. But there will be some new ones required. The difficulty we've got is that although there are other manufacturers of these sorts of automated hand wash units, we do have, across the borough, a large number of these Wallgate units, and we do have a service contract with Wallgate to maintain them. So if we were to depart and move to a completely different supplier, then there are issues with having to have two separate maintenance contracts, which would cost the council more money. But At the moment, the plans are to say that the Wallgate unit is our preferred option. Clearly, we can't specify it's got to be a Wallgate unit because that doesn't comply with procurement rules. So it will be for the tenderers to propose something if they think there's something equivalent to Wallgate units, and us to take that into account when we evaluate the tenders.
Thank you, Lindsay. Sue?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a couple of questions regarding the service access corridor. Can that be accessed by going over the end wall or with the door? Because I'm conscious that could become, sort of a hideaway or whatever.
The service access corridor is accessed through the lower on the plan, if you like, accessible toilets. Those accessible toilets will have radar keys on the outside, so people can get into those. And then the door itself into the service corridor will be a secure lock to keep that service corridor out of bounds.
But presumably it's not going to have a roof on it, is it, or is it going to be covered?
Oh, yes, sorry, Chairman. Yeah, that is definitely that's part of the under the roof construction. Fine. So it's basically the back end of what is currently the toilets. That corridor will be created and will be accessible from there. Oh
no, that's fine. That's what I was. Yeah. Will any of the cubicles have any windows? Because what my concern is, should the lights become vandalised, then they are all going to be completely pitch black.
There aren't any plans to have windows in them, Chairman. You'll see on the elevations, front elevation on the plan, that they are solid doors. There aren't any windows. But again, that is common to this style of a toilet block built elsewhere in southern England.
Yeah, and finally, you mentioned about having a radar key, but people with a disability will, of course, have a radar key, but what about families wanting to use the baby changing unit? They won't have a key, so how will they go into those cubicles at the end?
But radar keys are available from the council. We issue them here. You can buy the one from the customer services desk at the front here. So if there are people who are habitually using, baby changing facilities around the country, the purpose of the radar key is that you have one and you can use it all over the country. That will be common. Again, that's common to disabled facilities elsewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Gass, because I wasn't aware of that actually, but it's slightly too late. Yes, but no, I didn't realise you could actually get radar keys. You can buy them. What, without any, you don't have to produce evidence of having a disability or a child or anything.
No, so we do sell them to people who have got. Obviously, we don't go into a great deal of detailed explanations, but like I say, they are intended for baby changing and childcare matters. So they are available to people if they want to obtain them.
Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got a few questions. How quickly can this be implemented if we approve it today?
The programme is for the work to start in April, and because we still need to get the building regulations approval, we still need to go out to tender to procure the work, and we clearly couldn't start that until we had the sign-off from committee today. We'll be going out to tender early in the new year, and with a view to starting the work in April and completing I think it's a 3-month contract period we're currently working to.
If I can come back on that, I'm just very aware that one of our major events is the food festival, which is in May, and I think if that is going to be the case, I wouldn't like it to be delayed, but I think we would need to make sure that we have provision for toilet facilities for that event, because they are very well used over that weekend. The other questions I had, have we looked at options not to have a radar key? Because I know certainly down at Mudderford on the beach, the disabled facilities are used on and off, but a large proportion of the time they're not available to members of the public because you can only use them if you've got a radar key, and a lot of the time they're therefore underused. Do we have to provide a radar key, or could we just have those ones specified for disabled and baby changing, but actually not have a radar key on it?
So how would you obviously need to secure the doors, so how would that work without a lock?
I mean, to have the same lock that you have on all the other cubicles.
Oh, sorry, so what you mean, yeah. Sorry, these are detailed questions, Chairman, that I will take back to the team, and if it's something that I'd need to just think through the logistics of any complications that would create. But you know, I can see the point. If the other toilets are available to access without a key, why shouldn't they be? Yeah.
One final question, if I may. As my previous life as a midwife, I know that breastfeeding facilities are very lacking in most of our town centres, and I know that there are moves afoot by central government to make sure that we provide such facilities, and I wonder if the disabled and baby changed room, which looks like a fairly decent space, could be provisioned in such a way that it would be breastfeeding friendly as well, for women to use for breastfeeding. And I wonder if that could be something that we could consider as part of the process that we go through to provide these.
Yeah, Chairman, I'm happy to speak to Councillor Bath outside the meeting to find out what that entails and how easily that can be achieved.
Thank you both. Nicholas.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm concerned about kids. I'm saying small.
Nick, can you put your microphone?
Is that on now? My concern is the use of aluminium anodised for the kick plates. In my experience as a somewhat of an engineer, I use quite a lot of components which are anodised. Whilst they look very pretty when they're first anodised, especially with a kick plate, it will soon get scratched, and aluminium in that environment will look very, very scruffy in a very short period of time. So what I would suggest, from an engineering point of view, is the use of stainless steel as opposed to aluminium in that case. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies, Trish.
I thought you'd forgotten me. Through you, Chairman. On the floor plan, it shows the doors opening out onto the corridor, which I can understand why the doors are opening out rather than into the cubicle. But if there's people waiting in the corridor, is there room? It doesn't look as though there's much room there from the door, behind the door.
Chairman, on the plan, where you see the hatched areas, that's obviously the brick piers. Where you see just two parallel lines, that's actually an archway opening out onto the area in front of the toilet. So I would envisage people, unless it's raining of course, to be standing outside of that, and then when the doors open, then they go in.
Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick points. Already touched on by Councillor Bath, the food festival, but April through to June is our early tourism season. We get a lot of people come down before the schools break up to make the most of the peace and quiet of the area before the main season starts. If there's any delay, problems which do happen in construction, we then could be running into the main tourist season. So it comes back to my original question about there being ample provision made for alternative toilets in the immediate area. The other thing is, obviously there's going to be, I would assume, an increase in cleaning costs with our cleaning contract on this, because at the moment they can go into the existing toilets and throw a bucket of water over the floor, mop over it, change the check the toilet rolls are full, and then off they go, chuck a few the scented perfume things in the urinal, and that's what they do. But here you're going to have a lot of individual cubicles to make sure are clean, properly washed out. So have we looked at the possible increase in our costs for the toilet cleansing contract?
I'm sorry, Chairman, I don't know the details to answer that question. It's something that I can speak to our contracts manager who deals with with this work. But obviously the actual floor area is very similar. It might even be slightly less with that sort of service corridor taken out to the back of the building. But you know, in terms of the time it would take, I would hope it wouldn't be massively different. But I will come back to you when I've got that detail.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, if you could just let members know the answer to that, that would be very useful. Right, I don't have anybody with more questions, so we'll move to the debate. Who would like to kick off the debate? Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm really pleased to see this coming forward because I think it is well needed and it reflects on our tourism, but also facilities for local people in our town centre. So congratulations on you and the team for bringing it forward. I feel that the mix of the cubicles should be amended slightly, and what I'd like to propose is that we have 4 female cubicles, 2 urinals, which are obviously for males, and then all the rest of the cubicles are marked as unisex cubicles. I would also like to propose that we did have the ward councillor in advance of this come and discuss it with us, and he has some quite strong views about the external look of the toilets, and I'd like to propose that the town centre councillors have input into the final external look to be agreed with them. I feel that we also need to look into the aspect of not using radar keys for the disabled and baby changing facility cubicles and just having them as standard like the other cubicles so that they can be used to maximum effect. Investigating breastfeeding facilities and ensuring provision of alternative temporary toilets during events like the food festival when these are out of provision. So with those things in mind, I would be very happy to propose this and move forward with it as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Claire. So
I'm quite happy to second Councillor Barth's proposal because I too feel that by having those amended figures, we would then be serving all residents, young and old, and of either gender, etc. And also I would like to take on board the point that Councillor Geary raised about the stainless steel kick plates as well, and that the design be discussed with the ward councillor, if that could be added on.
thank you, Sue. Excellent. Right, it's proposed and seconded. I haven't seen anybody else indicating.
Could I just raise an issue of detail in terms of any changes? Because at the moment the plan is for the external appearance of the building to be very similar to how it is today. And on that basis, the advice from the planning department is that we won't need to get planning permission. Now, if there was any suggestions or requests for the exterior to be significantly changed, other than knocking holes through the walls, which is what's in here now, then that could require planning permission to be made, which would then potentially delay the project.
Lindsay, I think we all understood that. Councillor Hall did not like the appearance of the squared off openings and felt it should be an archway, as I understood what he had to say. And it is only a minor detail, so hopefully that will be all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's a very good point, because if you look at the arches on the Old Town Hall, the Mayor's Parlour, this is very harsh in contrast, and it would, if we could make them a nice curved arch, I can't see that there'd be a great deal of additional cost in that, then it would make it blend in more sympathetically, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Margaret and then Sue.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I certainly agree with that design change if it's possible, obviously without planning permission, because I think you're right, it would look a lot more in keeping with what else we have there. I wouldn't say I'm 100% on the changes that you put forward to the mix of the toilets, but fair enough. One other thing I'd like to just ask is, before we finally go to the vote, could we have what is now proposed actually read out? So, because there was something to do here with the changes to the trim as a possibility as well, which I not necessarily went back to the proposer. So could I just, could we clarify that when it comes to that?
Yes, certainly when it comes to that point. So
If I could just come back on what Councillor Bungie said, and I thoroughly agree. I'd forgotten about the arches at the Mayor's Parlour, but this would also be in keeping with the arches from the church, which it's backing onto. So it would give a far softer, more attractive appearance all over. Thank you.
thank you very much. If there is no more debate, I'd like to ask Claire, please, to read out her proposal.
Okay, to propose that there are 4 female toilets, 2 urinals, 5 unisex toilets, then investigate breastfeeding facilities in the disabled and baby change unit, the larger one, not have radar keys, but to have the disabled and baby change units as accessible as all of the other facilities. And
if I could just interrupt, that was investigate the possibility, was it, of the radar keys?
well, I think we should make the decision that we will not have radar keys there and have all of them open to the public to use when they're not being used by disabled.
Lindsay, thinking of your reply, are you content?
Well, like I say, Chairman, I'd rather, if you like, defer in terms of just checking that if there are going to be any operational complications that creates. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but I would just like to leave that flexibility, if we can, to have that discussion, when some more thought's been given to it.
Would you be happy with that, Claire? Okay, thank you.
Just
Carry
a
on.
couple more points. Details of the external design with regards to possibly putting arches into the openings to be agreed with the town centre councillors, and to ensure provision of alternative temporary toilets during events like the food festival. Oh, sorry, and to change the specification of the kick plates to be stainless steel.
Thank you for clarifying that. Are you happy that's feasible, Lindsay? Thank you. Right, up David.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just ask a question? Once the design changes have been made, will it come back to the committee so we can have a look at it?
It wouldn't normally come back to the committee, because we have suggested that Councillor Hall, who brought up the subject of the design, verifies that. Are you happy with that, Lindsay? Yeah, Margaret.
Just ask a question as well. I know the cost of stainless steel is quite high, and I just wonder what cost, there may be a cost implication there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I think it's a good idea, but I'm just wondering whether we need to consider that, or it would, do you think it would come in within budget?
In terms of the fairly small area of stainless steel we're talking about in the kick plate area, I don't think that's going to be a major problem. And as Councillor Geary said, that there may well be some long-term maintenance savings as a result.
Right, thank you very much, everybody. We'll move to the vote then. Those in favour, as Claire has read out?
It's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Lindsay? Thank you for that report. I guess you stay at the table for the next one then. Members, we go to page 15, the town centre parking study. Over to you again, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll recall that at one of your earlier meetings, you set up a town centre parking working party to look at in detail of the consultant's report that had been produced on the various aspects of town centre parking. That working party was set up comprising councillors Bath, Bungay, the leader of the councillors, Chairman, Geary and Hall, and they've met on now 3 occasions, actually, I think it's 4 occasions now, actually, since we met last week. And the recommendations for the working party are set out in Appendix 1. You will have received in your envelopes at the end of last week a supplementary information pack, which basically gave an update on the discussions that took place at the Scrutiny and Policy Overview Committee last Tuesday. And you've also had a further update handed out to you this afternoon, and the further update details some suggested amendments to the officer's recommendations, which are in bold on that extra sheet, and that's basically taken into account the supplementary information that you received at the end of last week, and also another table, which that there is a table in the appendix to the main report, which this is a supplementary report, which gives some information from the car park deck study, and unfortunately, those members of the working party who are here today will know that literally the report arrived on the Monday afternoon. It was circulated on the Monday afternoon to members, and it was discussed on the Tuesday, and then it went to scrutiny the same Tuesday evening. So it's all a bit of a fast track. And at that point, the report that had come from the consultants about the car park deck study was still a draft report. And since that fairly rapid progress through the system was done last Tuesday, we've had the opportunity to look at it in far more detail. And there were some issues that we picked up which have been now resolved. And the 2 main issues that have been corrected was that there was in the report an error in that £100,000 worth of fees hadn't been included in the car park deck estimates for the bypass car park, and also there had been quite a significant overestimate of cost for the bank close reconfiguration work. So that is now being corrected in the information that I've handed out. Sorry, Sarah's got a copy there for all the members. The effect of this correction, if I can just clarify this, Chairman, is actually a £100,000 increase in the estimate for the deck on the bypass car park, and a £210,000 reduction in the estimate for the bank close reconfiguration work. So there is a sort of report going in parallel to the Resources Committee, and thankfully this information has come in time for me to amend that before it goes to Resources Committee. But the effect of the reduction on the bank close costs is that the estimated cost of doing all of the surface car park reconfigurations reduces by that £210,000 figure, and is now £518,000 and 200. And that, which equates to £3,600 per space. So that's just the background as to why that information came out to you today. So this report, Chairman, deals with 2 areas. One is dealing with how to encourage greater use of the currently underused car parks in the town centre, and that is being achieved by limiting the daytime length of stay in the busiest car parks to a maximum of 4 hours, and also relocating the designated car park, the long stay car parking bays, which are currently in the bypass car park, moving those into the ground floor of the Saxon Square car park, which is a car park which isn't as well used as Bypass and other town centres. So the plan is that that there will be a 4-hour maximum stay in Bypass, Bank Close, Wick Lane and Saxon Square. So during the daytime, you wouldn't be able to physically buy a ticket for more than 4 hours. So that would obviously encourage people to park in other less prime car parks if they wanted to stay for more than 4 hours. And also, like I say, the long stay parking bays in Bypass car park would move out of there and move into the ground floor of Saxon Square car park, and that would be on a 1-year trial basically, because inevitably it's quite difficult when you make changes to car park designations to understand the full ramifications of what that will create. So, but you basically have to do it for a year because that's the frequency that we review our parking orders. So the plan would be to make those changes, leave them in operation from the 1st of April to the end of March next year, or the year after rather, and then also obviously then we can, in the autumn of 2018, we can review how successful those changes have been. So that is basically trying to rebalance the supply and demand of parking spaces, because what the study report showed was that in the town centre there is sufficient capacity in all of the car parks if they're all being used in an equal manner, but the fact is they aren't, that they are used in a different manner, and this is an attempt to try and address that and encourage people to park in the less used car parks. And then the other aspect of the working party's deliberations was to look at the effects of the loss of the car parks in the Bargates area when that development takes place. And the council has got 76 car parking spaces in its pitside car park, and then the Bargates, the Magistrates Court car park, which is owned by the county council, has got 74 spaces, and those won't exist when the development takes place. So we were looking at ways of replacing the 150 spaces that would be lost from that area, and that is what's detailed in the supplementary information that was sent out to you at the end of last week, and the recommendations from the working party are in paragraph 8 of that paper, and that describes the reconfiguration of surface car parks, that being the cheapest way of achieving the replacement of the 150 spaces lost from the Bargates area. So that would be achieved by reconfiguring the roundabout coach park area of the Leisure Centre East car park, which is obviously down the far end of the car park from here, and that would generate 71 car parking spaces. To reconfigure the Bank Close car park, as I've described earlier, which will create 25 additional spaces. If we don't have a system to sell the candle candle factory building, and that's a matter for resources committee to consider next year. One of the options is to demolish that area, and you could actually create another 8 car parking spaces in that as well. And then to reconfigure in fairly small manner the Priory, Bridge Street, Milham Street, Saxon Square, Wick Lane car parks, and that will create an additional 25 spaces, and also to move the coach parking area out of Maresmead car park, add some more spaces to the car park at the cliff top for coaches, and that would create 23 extra spaces. So all of that together would generate 144 car parking spaces, and as I say, that would now be at an estimated cost of £518,000, which is less than half the cost of the deck on Bypass car park. So that's your point, Chairman. I'll pause for any questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. Right, do we have anybody with any questions, please? Trish?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite concerned about two items on here. Moving the the bus around, coach parking area at the leisure centre, going into Bridge Street again. This is where it was at one time, and there was always complaints from the local residents and the shopkeepers because of the buses running all the time, and I thought that was one of the reasons why we moved them to the leisure centre, where they weren't going to be causing problems to other people. And then I've got another question. Do you want to answer that first? And then I've got another one.
Yes, when that was considered by the working party, the view was that that was obviously discussed at some length. The impact of moving the coaches, buses in particular, back to the Bridge Street terminus. That's something, as you know, was in existence about 2013, I think, and then it moved down to the roundabout where it is now in 2013. But obviously that creates 71 car parking spaces at a cost of about £200,000. Whereas if you look at the option to create 89 spaces, okay, a few more on the bypass car park by putting a deck on it, that's £1.1 billion. So it was heavily, well, the working party members are here, but the view of the working party was that was money better spent than building a deck on bypass car park. Now, when that was considered at scrutiny committee on the 14th, there was a different view expressed by some of the members of the scrutiny committee, as explained in paragraph 10 of the supplementary report.
That's my second question. Thank you. On the other, relocate the coach parking from Mares Mead, and you're suggesting to the Clifftop car park. This is a 4 mile, probably nearer 5 miles from town centre up to the Clifftop. Coaches, it's not an easy journey coming down from Highcliffe into Christchurch and going out because of traffic congestion. And I just feel that it's too far out of town. I know that coaches they'll drop off the customers in town, but I think this is a long journey. It's going to be a 10-mile journey there and back, basically, for the coaches, and increasing the traffic, which is bad coming down from Highcliffe in Stony Lane roundabout. And I just think, have you thought of any other area where they could go?
But again, the working party discussed that at some length, and again, the view was on a cost-benefit basis. By moving the coaches, you can generate 23 car parking bays in a fairly, good town centre or close to town centre location for around about £50,000. And again, that was viewed by the working party as being, good value for money. We did talk about the coaches clearly can park in some of the lay-bys on the A35. They can park, I think one of the lay-bys on the section between Fountains roundabout and Stone Lane roundabout is available for coaches to use. And there's also the lay-by out near the Cat and Fiddle as well, which I know that coaches sometimes use. So clearly they can choose where they want to park, but the recommendations are they don't park in Mares Mead car park.
You keep talking about money, but I think if the coaches can't park near where they're dropping off their customers or picking them up, we're probably going to lose all the custom.
Thank you both. Anybody else? Questions, please? Sue, yes, sorry, Sue.
We're always being told that cars are now getting wider, or possibly larger, but certainly wider. And I'm very impressed how you've managed to squeeze in an extra 144 spaces through one way and another. Are the widths of the spaces going to be adequate for our cars that are present cars or possibly cars in the future, bearing in mind how there are some members of our residents who may find it difficult to get in and out of a car, who are not necessarily registered disabled, but they just possibly need the doors open that much further.
Yeah, all of the designs, Chairman, have been based on the standard 2.4 metre wide by 4.8 metre long car parking bay, which is the British Parking Association's recommendations. Having said that, it's been their recommendations for quite a few decades, and as Councillor Spittle has said, cars have generally got larger over the years. But those are the sizes of the bays which are being replaced. In pit site and Bargate's car park, they are generally 2.4 metres wide, and so all of these calculations have been based on layouts based on that standard bay.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for the question, Sue. I think that's a very important point about our residents, just giving them room to get in and out, as there are many more elderly residents in this area. Have we ever priced changing the width or not?
I'm not aware that anyone's put a price to it, Chairman, no, but clearly if you make them wider, there'll be less of them. So there would be a cost both to physically burning the white lines off and repainting them, and also a reduction in income when the car parks are full. Clearly when they aren't full, it wouldn't make a difference, but on the times when they are full or close to being full, there would be less people parking there and therefore less income to the council.
Thank you, Lindsay. Claire?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I've probably overlooked, when I was reading all the papers, the comments of the scrutiny committee, because I kind of read through it and thought that they were in agreement with us from the first part, but it looks from what's said on page 3 of the supplementary information. At the end, it says they were to support the provision of additional parking capacity near the Bargates area by the construction of a deck on the bypass car park. So they were in disagreement with the proposed way forward that we had suggested as the working party. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, Chairman, there wasn't a formal vote of the scrutiny committee on that point, but there were views expressed by a number of members to that effect. So that there wasn't, if you like, a decision of the scrutiny committee one way or the other. There was a discussion around the point, and I just recorded the fact that there were a number of members that would prefer to see a deck on bypass car park.
Thank you, Lindsay. Nobody else with questions? We'll move to the debate then. Who wants to start the debate? David, thank you. I think as chairman of the working party, that's very appropriate.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to propose as set out. Clearly, members can see that with these surface changes, we've more or less come up to the 150 spaces that we will lose once the car parks at Pit Site and the Dorset County Council area go. And clearly members can see by the costs that is clearly the cheapest option for us. Now, I know that some people are going to say that you're spending money on car park, but at the end of the day, we will lose the revenue from the car parks that will be gone. And so in order to retain that revenue, we have to provide those spaces. And so I'm fairly certain that this will suffice with our car parking needs in association with the information that the consultants gave us. But as far as item 10 from the overview and scrutiny committee, clearly it will take some time for the use of those car parks to come forward to us to see whether or not we have got enough. And my view is that in a year, 18 months time, if we still have a problem, then we can come back and revisit and look once again, maybe putting an optional deck on the bypass car park in accordance with the views of the scrutiny committee. Thank you, Chairman.
David, thank you. I'm assuming it's the recommendation as set out in the original papers plus what we have been given tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm quite happy actually to second this proposal as set out with in the amended sheet that we have in front of us, because I congratulate the officers at the way that, and also the working party, the way that they have looked at this and been able to juggle the numbers and create the additional 144 spaces, which also is with the minimum amount of cost to this council, and importantly disturbance to the residents who actually live adjoining the car parks. So I can, you know, which would be quite an upheaval actually for them. I also agree, and I'm sorry I disagree with one of our members, I do agree about moving the coaches out of Maresmead, as so often in the summer I have tried to get into Maresmead car park with my grandchildren in order that they can enjoy the water park that we've got, the splash park we've got, which is a fantastic free facility for residents, only to find that there are big spaces taken up by the coaches. And I would far rather that I appreciate what she has said about the coaches moving up to Highcliffe, but it's so important for us to encourage use of the splash area, and also by encourage people to park there, which is also, they can then go up to the town should the other car parks be full, and also enjoy the quay and the Priory area as well and walk around. So as I said, I'm quite happy to second the proposal as set out.
Thank you, Sue. Claire, and then I've got Colin and Trish.
Oh. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to congratulate the officers on all the work that they've done on this, because it was a very large piece of work, and the initial documents that came to us as the working party were quite onerous to read and to actually decipher. They were really thick, and we did spend an awful lot of time debating it and trying to come up with something that was the right compromise that worked for everyone as much as we could. I know that I've received an email from a resident questioning the reason that the Bargates and Pitside car parking spaces are going to be lost, but I think that is a debate that has actually happened a long time ago within this council, and the whole council chose to approve the redevelopment of the Bargate site, and that's an awfully long way down the line. I think it's virtually, I think it's signed for now. It's not quite, but it's nearly there, and it has taken a long time to get that site to where it is. So the one aspect of it that I found particularly difficult was the reprovision of the parking spaces back in the Two Rivers Mead car park. Initially I wasn't in favour of that, but when it came down to looking actually at the costs involved and the amount that we could reprovision, the number of spaces that are going to be lost at about half the cost of putting another deck on the bypass car park, I had to agree that that was the best way forward. So I'm very happy with the way that it's set out now, and I'm happy to go along with the proposer and seconder.
Thank you, Claire. Colin?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it's no secret that I think the selling off of the pit site car park is a disaster. With all the moving about, a provision of car parking spaces in different areas, there will be no car parking in Bargates for anybody. Now that is a problem because we've been trying to incorporate Bargates into our town centre improvements and to improve businesses and trade access up there. All that is out the window. So I I still oppose the sale of the pit site. I think it will be a disaster, and in the longer term, this council will regret it. We've talked about the possibility of a deck on the Waitrose car park. Well, Waitrose, we were told right at the early start when we started looking at this, the officer said Waitrose were totally opposed to that, as the disruption of that construction could have a disastrous effect on their trade. And they made an alternative suggestion. Now, I'm sure we wouldn't want to lose Waitrose out of Christchurch because it becomes unviable. And the cost of it, any money we get from the sale of the pit site car park is totally wiped out. We've had no benefit to the people of the borough at all. So again, a disaster. In the early days, when we were looking at car parking, way back, when we had a proper shopping study done in the town centre, we were advised then that we would need additional car parking to make the town centre viable in the longer term, and that parking should be close as possible to the shops. Again, I come back to Bargates, we're removing all that for those shops. And the consultant did say in his original report that the car parking that we currently have is sufficient for 4 or 5 years. I can't remember the exact figure, but we would need additional parking in that time, and that was without taking the pit site out. So, you know, we in the longer term, we are going to have a major problem with parking if we want this town to stay vibrant and viable, which I'm sure all the councillors around here do, and all the businesses want it to. So, although this makes some very good suggestions, and I'm glad to hear the officer say the costs have been amended by £200,000, because I was horrified when I saw some of the costs, you know, for providing 24 car parking spaces over £200,000. How can that be? No. So I have my reservations. I think it's a good move forward. Coaches, I think, yes, they do need to be taken out of the town centre. And a lot of towns do this. They have out-of-town coach parking areas where toilets and refreshments are available for the drivers. I know the drivers might not be happy that they can't sort of park their coach and then wander into the town and do their own little bit of sightseeing and shopping, but you know, we have to look after the people that want to come in and spend money. So I'll support it, but I would like my reservations on the sale of the, well, total opposition of the sale of the pit site car park noted, and my concerns that the Bargates people are going to suffer terribly once that and the Magistrates Court goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Trish, followed by Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, like Councillor Bungie, I have got concerns over this. I haven't decided yet whether I will support it or I will abstain, because I have no concerns about removing the using the Mayor's Mead car park for cars, because I can see that, but I have got concerns about where the coaches are going, and I definitely have concerns about moving the buses back to Bridge Street. So I will consider in the next moment or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Nick?
Thank you, Chairman. Whilst I support 90% of the recommendation, I do not support 8A, which is the replacement roundabout and the car parking, which has just been mentioned by the previous councillor. The reasons that I am opposed to moving it back, it's not from a financial point of view, it's from basically safety and the provision of that. I consider an important part of the bus is operational time when they stand. Now, one of the reasons it was moved was because there was, and we've had a number of complaints about buses parking in the Civic Offices car park, and the engine is running over and over again. Too much time spent there, and the congestion of the fumes from diesel is not very pleasant in that area. The other issue, as far as parking that area is concerned, is the amount of accidents which have happened, and people have been injured by buses. And we were forever replacing the sign by the small roundabout there, with buses damaging that area. So whilst I support 90% of the recommendation, I shall abstain from voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I don't have anybody else down to speak. This is, oh, David, sorry.
Madam Chair, I know I've spoken, but I just wanted to sort of clarify one thing, if I may, is that the area that at the front of the Civic Offices car park, where the buses stop, is public highway, and we have no jurisdiction to stop them from using that. And quite often, well, only last week there was a bus park there, and of course we have the public toilets there, so I'm sure that drivers are using the facilities. So it's just to make members aware that that's why the buses still use that area. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Nick's asked to speak again, and then we'll go to the vote.
Can I just come back on that, Chairman? Yes, David is quite correct. It is public highway, but during discussions with the bus companies, it was a gentleman's agreement that if we supplied operational space at the Two Rivers Meet, they wouldn't handshake-wise use the Civic Office to park.
Thank you. I think we've aired this pretty well. So it's been proposed and seconded. Those in favour of the proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Yes. Those against? 1. Abstentions?
3.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Lindsay, for all the work that's. Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much to the working party as well. I know you spent a lot of time delving into this one. We'll now move to agenda item 6, which is the representatives at meetings on behalf of the council. We've got an update, and we're going to start with Claire. Claire, you have a very comprehensive update here. Is there anything you wish to add to this?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's fairly explanatory. I did think it was a very worthwhile homelessness forum that we created within our council, and I hope that it continues. But if members have got any questions, happy to try and answer them.
Thank you for that. Yeah, excellent. We now have Dorset Strategic Planning Forum. Margaret.
Sorry, it's basically a consultation that the government has put forward for the right homes in the right places, and we were given a lot of information about it with presentations from certain parties. It's all on here as to who was there, and at the end of the day they are looking to change the system by having a standard approach to housing requirement and also a housing delivery test in certain cases, especially where housing has not been delivered when they feel that it could have been pushed further. So it will, in the long term, potentially increase the amount of housing that is required in areas across the country, not only in Dorset. And as you can see, it will have quite a profound effect on, possibly have quite a profound effect on Bournemouth housing in particular, but it will affect all areas of Dorset. I think if you read it, it is explanatory, and that's it. It's very interesting.
Thank you very much. I know David has questions. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Whether Councillor Phipps is able to answer this for me or not, you're obviously told that the study for traveller sites had to be updated. Did they give an indication of when that might be available at all?
As far as I'm aware, something came out in the newsletter this week. It is there, and we're okay. We haven't really got to provide any more than we've already got. That was the update. That there was we're actually fine on it. So that was it. Yeah, but if you have a look at your newsletter, they have published it. It has been published for members this week. I know some people's newsletters end up in the wrong place in their computer, I think, yes. Yeah. Or you may not have had time to look at it. But at the end of the day, as far as I'm aware, we are fine because of the changes to the regulations. As far as permanent sites are concerned, we have sufficient. And as far as transit sites are concerned, they are provided by the County Council.
Thank you, both of you. Yes, I can confirm that I read the information only a few days ago in the newsletter and was quite pleased when I saw what was there. Thank you. Sue.
Yes, can I congratulate both both councillors actually who have presented these reports, which are very full and informative. Referring to the second report from Councillor Phipps, presumably are the figures that have been stated going to increase in view of the budget announcement by the Chancellor this afternoon?
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you that. This report was based on what the information that we were given at the meeting on the 17th of October by, I think I've got it down here, a lady who was very, very knowledgeable on this from the Planning Association, Planning Officers Association, I believe she came from. So whatever has occurred today, I'm sorry, I have no idea what the implications might be.
Thank you both. I'm sure you're right,
yeah.
Sue, and I'm quite
thing,
sure that following the budget there will be an increase in our figures, but we can't possibly know.
Exactly, because it's a moving figure. It's always moving, yes. I shouldn't say unfortunately, because there is a need for housing.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have the microphone on. Sorry, everybody. No more questions, so we'll move to the Dorset Waste Partnership Joint Committee. Margaret and Trish attend that on our behalf. Do you want to start, Margaret, and then Trish fill in? I was thinking of your voice and your throat moment.
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the headline is still, again, that there is a predicted underspend, which has actually increased from the last report that I did. So our share at the moment of the underspend has gone up from about 30-odd thousand as it was last time we attended a meeting to 50,802. I mean, I think that's the headline. And the other important part is that they have now 4 full-time staff in enforcement. They have recruited. And we're hoping that will now become better as far as fly tipping is concerned. I'll answer any questions if I can, or Trish may be able to as well.
Sue, you have a question?
Again, I don't want you to think I sort of have sat and listened to. Well, I just picked up the relevant points. The Chancellor has actually mentioned about disposal of plastics, etc. So it's fortunate that there is an underspend, because no doubt that will, by insisting that authorities start having a specialised disposal program, that's going to be quite expensive. So no, I'm very happy to see the underspend. Thank you.
I just come back on that. The Dorset Waste Partnership does already recycle or deal with plastics as part of the recycling. So I'm not sure what the implications might be, but they may not be too bad because they are already dealing with that and they have the processes in place to deal with the recycling of plastics.
If I can come back on that, except that, you know, in our recycling bins, we put in our bottles, etc., plastic, but I think this is of the more specialised items that are causing problems to sea life, etc., that are in a lot of lotions and it's the small beads and things that you will find in a lot of makeup or whatever that go into our supply.
Thank you, Sue. Can I just ask Trish if there was anything she wanted to add to it before we go to Colin for a question, please?
And just to say, Madam Chairman, I'm very glad Margaret comes with me because she does such an excellent report.
Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, it's no secret that I was totally against Dorset Waste Partnership when we went into it, but I've gratefully been proved wrong, and it is now a big success. Can Councillor Phipps or Councillor Jameson tell us that what sort of preparatory work is being done by Dorset Waste Partnership should the Shire County be implemented, and if we withdraw from Dorset Waste Partnership, if we go into Bournemouth, because that is obviously going to have big financial implications for them. Thank you.
Yeah, I did ask that question actually, and all of the figures that you see here, it says I have written it in here, do not consider the future funding position of partner councils nor the potential for change via local government reorganisation within the geographical county of Dorset. It is something that if we are disaggregated from Dorset, they will have to look at. We would not, I think, disaggregate from the Dorset Waste Partnership on day one, because we need to continue obviously seamlessly with our waste collections. But along the way, somewhere along the way, things would have to change. And yes, there will be financial implications for all the current partners within the Dorset Waste Partnership. But as far as I am aware, they have not done the figures on those at the moment. I did ask that question, as I'm sure Trish will agree with me.
Yes, Sue?
Question. I hear what you're saying. With regard, I for some time ago, I used to sit on the panel for Stour Valley Partnership, which included at that time 3 local authorities: Christchurch, East Dorset and North Dorset. That has gradually grown such that Poole came into it, and also Purbeck and various other authorities. So do you think there's a possibility that instead of us coming out of Dorset Waste Partnership in the future, that other authorities could also be absorbed into the Dorset Waste Partnership in the future, bearing in mind the great success that it's now making?
I have no idea. I suppose anything's possible. At the moment, I know that Bournemouth and Poole each have their own systems of waste collection, and I expect there would have to be quite a lot of financial analysis across Dorset Waste Partnership, Bournemouth, Poole, to see what would be the best plan. I have no idea. I can't answer that, and I'm sure that this will have to be looked at very carefully by everyone.
Obviously, it's a question that our 2 representatives on the joint committee could take forward and ask. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Margaret, and thank you, Trish, for representing us at those meetings. I know that there'll be a lot of complications in the future as far as they're concerned, but I'm sure you'll do a very good job for us. And thank you, Claire, for the meeting you go to. Right, the last item is item number 7, which is the forward plan. I note that in January we have Christchurch Coastal Strategy. The interim report will be coming forward to us. I'm not sure do you know if there's anything else coming, please?
I haven't got any further updates at the moment, but obviously the floor plan's a living document, so as and when we can update it, we will. I think Councillor Bond.
Claire?
Could I ask a question on the coastal strategy being the instigator of its existence? It is a very high profile strategy, and we've had an awful lot of interest and an awful lot of input from residents, which is great. I do hope that we will have some member input at an early stage into the outcomes of the data that has been received, so that when the interim report comes to us, members have already been involved in that process. And I just wondered if we could ask for that to happen through our officers at this early stage when they're obviously compiling the data to come back on that interim report. And if there is to be some member involvement, since I kicked it off, I would be very pleased to be part of that if possible.
Thank you, Claire. Right, we have nothing else on the agenda, so we will close the meeting. It's the last meeting before Christmas as well, isn't it? Goodness gracious me. Can I wish you all a very enjoyable time at Christmas and very happy New Year to you all. Thank you.